Everybody, Max Finn here. We got another episode of the Unicorn Perspective with Nathan Hirsch. He's not Nick Shackelford. We had to to make a last minute swap, a last minute change, and I'm excited about this though because we had Nathan on the list of people that we're going to talk to anyway. He was coming up in a future episode, so we get to move the episodes up a little bit. And this is going to be an interesting one too because Nathan has a lot of experience in like just how to scale teams, how to hire, but also how to grow companies, how to bootstrap companies, how to handle all the challenges that I'm sure most people watching this that are dealing with entrepreneurship are dealing with. So Nathan, it's good to have you on here, man. I'm excited to chat, and I apologize that we were kind of a little last minute messaging you to get you on here today.
No, I appreciate it. It's going to be a lot of fun. It kind of worked out perfectly. I'm heading out right after this to Boston for a wedding, so I kind of was able to squeeze this in, and yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, Boston's one of my like all-time favorite places. That's I went to school there for 2 years, so love Boston, especially this time of year. So it's you're gonna have a good trip there, I'm sure. So let me start with this. I know there's a lot of places that we can take the conversation, right? And I plan to get there, whether it's going to be bootstrapping or building a company. But what really fascinates me is talent and like finding talent. Like we struggle with this extensively, and I know a lot of other people who are struggling. Like just from your perspective, because you get to see a lot of employers, and you also get to see a lot of people that are looking for work essentially and that have skills. Like, why do you think right now, despite the obvious that, you know, we're at record unemployment, do you think it's so hard for people to find talent? Like just, you know, at a high level?
I think the biggest thing is they just don't teach you that in school. I mean, or really any courses. There's all these courses on how to run Facebook ads, how to grow an agency, how to sell on Amazon. I mean, I went to school on how to interview and apply for a job, how to do economics and finance and accounting, but there's no one out there teaching you how to actually hire, how to actually build teams. And I mean, no matter what industry you're in, you have to do it. At some point, you can't do it all yourself. And the world is just full of entrepreneurs with really good ideas that never got off the ground because they couldn't hire the right people. And it's full of people that don't really have a unique idea, don't really have a unique value proposition, but they hire really good people and their business takes off and they make a lot of money. So I think people underestimate how important becoming good at hiring is. And they also just tend to focus on all the things that they can't control. Like, does this person have personal issues, internet outages? Is someone going to offer them more money? Instead of focusing on the stuff that you can control, how am I attracting candidates? How am I interviewing? What's my interview process like? Am I making it better over time? How am I setting expectations? How am I giving feedback and starting that feedback loop? How am I managing, leading, running meetings? What am I doing to reduce turnover? And they tend to focus on all the other things that they can't control instead of constantly making improvements themselves into their business.
Totally. And so what I think is fascinating about what you guys do, and I'm sure you have, like, obviously I don't know the entire process, your entire, you know, how you find talent and your secret sauce, right? But what I do think is fascinating with like finding talent and getting them on board is this focus on, I think a lot of people when they're hiring, they're kind of going with their gut, right? They sit down and face to face, like I need to see this person and talk to them and ask them the right questions. Whereas I'd imagine just based on the platform you built out that you look at a lot of just data, right? You're looking at, I'm sure you do have a process where you talk to people and stuff, and that's important. But a lot of the decision making, I'd imagine, is based on like facts and information and numbers and data, which doesn't have bias, right? And I think like that's something, a recent book I read by Malcolm Gladwell talks a lot about that, how like we as humans, when it comes to like hiring, for example, when we sit across from somebody, like we like to think we're not biased and we like to think that we're just completely objective, but we have, you know, these kind of gut feelings where we're like, hey, this person doesn't look professional, or this person's not really paying attention, or they look anxious, or we're just kind of reading people. And this could be just an incredibly talented person who's going to just do an excellent job, but because of our kind of external factors, we're not going to give them a shot, and vice versa. We might give somebody a shot that looks super confident and they're like put on the best face ever, but they suck at their job. Right. So I'm curious, like for what you guys do you see that like translating? Do you see that being a factor where it's like, hey, like data is the most important thing, or are you seeing it, hey, you know, we also when we talk to people, we get a good feel there, and that's been a important factor?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of how we look at it. I mean, for years, I used to hire people just based on skill, just based on those one-on-one interviews in person. And someone would have 5 years of experience, they'd have some references, they'd work for a big company, and then 3 months later, it would blow up in my face, and I would wonder, hey, how's that person that's so talented such a bad fit for this job? And what we realize is that skill is just one part of the equation. We really
Yep.
need that trifecta of skill, attitude, and communication. And it's very rare that you hire someone, you're like, wow, they had that perfect skill set, they had a great attitude, they communicated at a high level, but they were a terrible hire. That usually doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if we break that down, for skill, you don't really need everyone to be a 10 out of 10. You can hire people that are a 3 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10. What you really care about is that they're honest about what they can and cannot do, and they're priced accordingly. So we get about 2,000 applicants a week to get on our platform. We let in one out of every 100. We put them through skill tests. If they're a graphic designer, we look at their portfolio. If they're a developer, we have dev tests they put them through. And we have people that we let in that are $5 an hour. We have people that we let in that are $100 an hour. But again, their price range needs to match their skill, and they have to be honest about what they can and cannot do. Then you got attitude. We
Yep.
want people
Attitude's
who are,
huge.
it is. It's really a game changer. We want people who are passionate about what they do. I hate bookkeeping. I'm sure you hate bookkeeping.
Yes.
If I hire a bookkeeper, they need to love being a bookkeeper as much as I love being an entrepreneur. Those people are out there. My accountant, my bookkeeper, they love bookkeeping. They can do it 12 hours a day and love it. We want people that don't get aggressive when things don't go their way. We both live in a world where not all clients are rainbows and butterflies, right? There's going to be difficult people out there, tough conversations, things that are unfair, and you want people that can be the bigger man, the bigger woman, that stay professional at all times. You want people who are obviously positive, that don't go to negativity or aggression the second that things don't go their way. So that's really what you should be looking for in that one-on-one interviews, and that's what we do via Skype because it's remote. So we look for people who have a great attitude, and we're really looking for red flags. We try to challenge people. We try to pull it out of them. What is this person going to tell us or say to us or imply that shows they don't have a great attitude? And then is communication. And that's really the thing that holds it all together, because if I hire someone that has a great attitude and a great skill set, but I can't communicate with him, nothing else really matters, right? So we have 15 pages of communication best practices that they have to memorize and get tested on. Stuff like responding within a business day, how you handle emergencies, hitting due dates. Obviously, they have to speak English at a high level, stuff like that. But it's really that full picture. And we track that stuff. I mean, it's tough to get in. We're pretty quick to remove people if they get in and they're taking projects they can't do at a high level, if they're showing signs of bad attitude, if they don't communicate. But we also keep track of how people did in the interview process, how they did on our platform. If we let someone in and they're awesome, we go back and we say, hey, what did that person say? What did that person do? What kind of skills did he have? If they get in and they get 3 client complaints in the first week, we look in and say, okay, what new can we add to this process? What did that person say, so we can make sure that that same type of person doesn't get back onto our platform?
Totally. So what's interesting with your model also is you have these different tiers. You've kind of built this system where employers can come in and they can, like you said before, you don't need a rock star for every job, right? You need people that can get the job done at a level based on what you're paying them, right? So the kind of price to value ratio fits, and not everyone, like I said, has to be the person that's going to be leading the charge. And people that can do tasks on a daily basis for different, different sectors within your company. The VA versus like full-time employment thing's been interesting to me, and I think we see it a lot just in our world. I feel like the agency world, the e-com, the online business world, VAs have become really, really popular. Now I'm curious with your background, because you said your first few companies you're bootstrapping it. You went from $5,000 to millions of dollars. Do you think that had a role in your kind of passion for VAs, or this, not passion for VAs, that sounds odd, but this type of model where it's like running a company that stays very lean, that keeps your overhead relatively low? That's my first question. I have another question after that based on an answer, kind of what the next steps would be.
Yeah, I mean, me, just like every entrepreneur out there, have made mistakes. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made in the past was opening up an office. I took this business that was remote and I opened up an office, adding overhead. I paid for these remote people to relocate and come to my office. And I thought, hey, this is going to build a better culture. We're going to be more productive. We're going to grow this thing. And it led to the opposite. First of all, I felt like I created a 9 to 5 job for myself that I had to drive into work every day. But people were less productive. They didn't feel like they wanted to be there 9 to 5. They missed that remote lifestyle. I was paying more money for overhead that was really unnecessary. Not to mention, I was also pretty young. I was like 22, 23. So people taking me seriously in person is a lot different than me taking me seriously in person being online. So for me, we got rid of that. We went back to the remote. We went back to more VAs, freelancers, and had a lot more success doing that than we did. And we learned a lot of lessons along the way. And so when I started Free Up, it was that concept of, hey, we have this vetting process that I kind of described to you that we've done for 5 years. When people get through it, very high percentage chance they do a good job. And we want to offer that to other people and see what they like, picking from our Rolodex of vetted people. And that's really how we took it off the ground. But, I mean, I practice what I preach. My team of VA builds me 1,200 hours a week. I have rock stars that monitor my Skype, my email, my live chat 24/7. They do our billing $200,000 a week and paying people and charging clients. They run my social media. They recruit people and they do the interviews. And so, I mean, I couldn't run my business without them. I can't work that many hours a week if I wanted to. So I really try to practice what I preach. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs are not taking advantage of kind of the incredible time we're at right now.
Yeah. What's fascinating, though, and this is, I don't necessarily have an answer for this, but it is interesting to see, because I see two ends of the spectrum, right? I see on one end, there are businesses, like 37 Signals, those guys, they've been running their companies for a long time, totally dispersed. You have people like, Ezra Firestone, a good friend of mine, who has like 100 plus employees now, and they're all remote, right? So I guess the difference between remote and VA, but they're all, I kind of bucket them in the same, because they're not in the same office. They're not really building an office culture necessarily. But then I see the, Facebooks and the Googles and Twitter and kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, where you have the venture-backed Silicon Valley companies, you have the big tech companies, the Amazons, the Microsofts, and they've kind of gone the entire opposite end of the spectrum. Right now, I'm sure, obviously, Facebook has 30,000 contractors that review ads. So they still have contractors and they still do plenty of that, but they also have an office that brings people in every day. And like for a while, for Google, for example, that was kind of their claim to fame. That was a big thing in the 2000s. They had chefs and all kinds of stuff. So I guess I'm curious, like do you think there's a time and a place for that, this is right, or do you think it's just, hey, like Google and Facebook and these companies, I know it's hard to say, they're $100 billion, $1 trillion companies, they can't change now, but like that you could grow a company to a $100 million without actually building a team of kind of full-time and an office?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure at some point, just from a cost and control standpoint, it might make sense to do that. It probably helps with recruiting and other stuff like that. But, I mean, you have to remember, that's like 0.00001% of businesses out there. The average entrepreneur is running a startup like me, like you. Maybe we get to 100 million, and that's amazing, and we can influence and impact a lot of people that way. Most companies are not starting, or no, most people are not starting the next Facebook. That doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just a very small percentage. So I think for the majority of entrepreneurs, the whole remote thing just makes a lot of sense. Why limit yourself to your town and the towns around you when you can get access to people all over the world at different price points, full-time, part-time, project-based, at different skill sets, different backgrounds. So I think that on some level, when you get to that big, yeah, it probably does make some sense. But I think that for most entrepreneurs, that there's just so many benefits of going the remote route. It's tough to be like, oh, because Facebook is doing it, I need to go that route too.
No, I totally agree. And for me, it's playing devil's advocate. I actually agree with you. I think they've actually now done like surveys and stuff of people that work at these companies, and they found that a lot of those amenities, they would rather just have, more time to work from home and kind of more flexibility than have, the chef and the video games in the office and all this stuff. Because it's a brilliant move for the company. So what I would say is like it benefits the company most, and that's why Google really started doing it. It wasn't to like, maybe they say it was to make everyone happy and treat our employees better, but it was an economic decision, right? It's, hey, you're coming into our office, and these are the reasons why you might leave. It's to go to the doctor, it's to go to the gym, it's to eat lunch. So we're just going to bring all this in house, so you stay here. So you don't have an excuse to leave, and you can stay from 9 to 9 every day, and feel bad about leaving. So yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of people like the ability to kind of make their own hours and work from home and not have to go into the office every day and get dressed up and all that stuff. I guess though, one of the things I've dealt with as a personal challenge, and I'm curious like how you handle this, and I'm sure other entrepreneurs listening have similar challenges. I find it difficult to turn off, right? So when we do have an office downtown, and when I go into that office and I leave the office, there's kind of a physical move, right? I'm leaving one place, I'm going to another place. This is work, this is home. It becomes really tricky where it's like, I'm here at home. I can walk over, and in my bedroom, we have walk over to the TV. There's things that you can do, and it's hard. My wife comes home to like separate the two. So I'm curious, just personally, how do you, handle that, separating the two, if you're working a lot from home, of like, hey, this is my work zone, my work time, and this is my, personal time.
Max, you hold on 1 second. My dog is like crying and wailing.
No, it's fine. Go for it. I heard that, so I'll take over. So this is one of the this kind of goes to to one of the points of working from home, and I deal with this a lot. So like in the office right now, I have Hookie over here, and she's just chilling and sleeping, but it can get noisy. So that's the one perk. There's a few perks of having an office, I would say, but one of the perks is definitely being able to separate the dogs. It's kind of like everyone's watching right now. There was a Silicon Valley episode, I think it was like a season or 2 seasons ago, where they merge and they let the dogs come into work. It's like bring your dog to work day, and it just absolutely ends horribly. There's just dogs everywhere, and people are getting sick and allergic and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it was almost like a perfectly timed example of to illustrate a point. So while Nathan's taking care of the dog there, I also want to remind anybody, it's in our paid traffic training group. If you guys are watching right now and you have any questions for Nathan, you have questions about finding VAs, you have questions about bootstrapping, building a company, anything that falls into that bucket, make sure to drop those questions in the stream inside paid traffic training. Like usual, when we get to the kind of 45-minute mark, we pull the plug on all the free channels, and we open it up for Q&A for our paid traffic training students. So if you guys are watching inside paid traffic training, make sure you drop those questions below, so that way we can cover them when you guys we get to the end of the
video. I think he's sick or something. I had to let him out in the backyard. We're live. You can't make that stuff up.
No, it's fine. It actually, I was joking to the people watching. I was saying like it was kind of a perfect example of what we were just talking about, which is separating work and home, right? Because I have 2 dogs here, right? And I was just saying like it's we get bad weather down here in Florida, and my one big dog, he pants and goes crazy every time there's rain. So it's literally like every single day I need to separate myself from him, because it's just panting for 2 hours and it's impossible to work. But yeah, so that's stuff happens, and that's why I like doing this live, because it does add a level of excitement, and it makes it less predictable, which I enjoy personally, right? Other people might not enjoy it. So I guess kind of back to the question, which is, how do you handle that? Right. Being able to say, hey, this is my workplace and my home. I need to be able to split those 2 kind of parts of my brain and turn things off.
Yeah, so I think getting into some kind of routine, I mean, for me, it was figuring out, and that's what I struggled with for a while. It's like, when am I really the most productive? Some people are the most productive in the middle of the night. Some people it's the afternoon. For me, it's the morning. So for me, if I can wake up early, I'm usually up by 6 o'clock, and go into my office, really cut myself off from the world and just get a ton of stuff done for 3 to 4 hours. And then by the time I get out of there, the rest of my day is phone calls, podcasts. I have 2 dogs. I have a park outside. I can go for a run and wrap it up by 4:30, go to the gym for an hour, intense workouts. By the time I come home, my fiance's home, and work goes away unless there's some kind of emergency or late night meeting or something that was previously planned. And by structuring that day, you can kind of have that balance. I mean, a lot of people, they're so focused on like finding that perfect balance instead of finding like what actually makes them productive and what actually makes them happy. I mean, if your friends, your relationships, your family is like suffering because you're working a ton, that's obviously not good. If you're not working a 9 to 5, but you're working random times, but you're still going out on the weekends, you still have a great relationship, you're still seeing your family and a big part of their lives. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's important. So I wouldn't focus necessarily on finding that perfect balance. I would figure out how do you get done what you need to get done, and how do you make sure that you're actually enjoying life, the whole reason why you became an entrepreneur to begin with.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I guess the challenge with where we are right now, just technologically and from like a business standpoint, is communication now is instantaneous and it's in everyone's hands. And so there's this balancing act of, hey, like I can get done what I need to get done. Like this is the work I need to get done today. But then there's all these other people out here that they have things that they need to get done. And some of it may depend on me or might not, but they want to ask me questions. And so that's the challenge I find is like, you know, I can focus on me and schedule my day the best of my ability and turn it off. But it's really enforcing that turning it off thing, because you have your phone on you all the time. It has Slack on, it has email, it has text, it has your phone. You have, you know, usually your computer with you most of the time that has the same amount of stuff, and having people respect your boundaries, especially if you're dealing with an agency or something like that, where you have clients and to them, it's like, you know, that's ironically, that's why Nick isn't on today. So Nick he gave me a call yesterday. He was like, dude, I'm so sorry. We have one of our biggest clients. And he basically called me up like late last night and said, like, just reamed him out for whatever reason. I don't know the details of it, but said, like, I need to go and my team needs to meet with them tomorrow for an entire day. And like, that's the stuff where it gets really challenging, is respecting boundaries of people and how to say like, okay, you know, I'm going to respect my boundary, but that means like I might have to do a hard no to a client for paying me. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And I think it's a unique challenge that like business owners and entrepreneurs deal with today that I don't imagine they dealt with 20, 30 years ago. I could be wrong, right? But I don't imagine to the same extent there was as much pressure and stress on communication as there is today, which is, you know, I don't know how much further it's going to go, right? I don't know if it's you know, what's going to look like 10 years from now. It's hard to fathom like what that's going to be. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, a few quick comments off that. I mean, part of it is setting expectations up front and setting those boundaries, because at some point you're not going to be able to scale past a certain level if you're taking every phone call at 8 p.m. And at some point, if you get enough clients, it just becomes too crazy. The second part, which kind of ties into what I'm all about, is virtual assistants. Is I have people that cover my stuff 24/7. So if I go to the gym, I shoot someone a message, hey, I'm out for the day. They cover everything. I also spend a lot of time teaching them, hey, up to this level, you're handling this. Yes, if one of my biggest clients comes and says, hey, I'm closing my account, that's obviously like the high level, contact me right away. But I need to teach them like what is to contact me and what isn't. And a lot of times with new VAs, like I'll get a text at 9 p.m. and I'll vibrate them back. I'm like, that's not an issue that you contact me at 9 p.m. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And just really reinforce that and set those boundaries, rather than getting them used to coming to me or even coming to my team leaders for every little thing. I also teach people to make phone calls back. So if I get a phone call or a Facebook message at night and someone wants to be a client, they want to learn about FreeUp, whatever it is, I'll say, hey, I can either call you tomorrow, here's my calendar link, or I can just have my assistant call you back right now. Like, which one do you prefer? And just getting into those routines where you almost have a solution to everything before it actually happens, if you actually want to set boundaries and be able to get away from your business.
I love it. And it's something I really do respect about what you're doing, because I'm the exact opposite. So I'm a very unorganized person, and I don't have a lot of systems. And you know, the positive thing is that if you can recognize it, you can start putting people around you that are the exact opposite, so they can do those things. But I always do find it amazing, and it's like a more aspirational thing to get to a point where like individuals like you who have like every part of their kind of business and everything they're doing, they have, you know, systems and teams for it, and people that are kind of managing that because at the end of the day, I think if you don't have that, it's very, very difficult to have the level of freedom that you want to have as an entrepreneur, which is the whole point, right? At the end of the day, if it doesn't, the money's not really the reason people truly, I think, get into entrepreneurship, starting their own business. Maybe some people in the beginning it is, but at some point it's freedom, right? It's like money's just a means to freedom. But if you have the money, but you can't detach yourself from it because you have too many people that depend on you and too many things you need to do on a daily basis, then you're pretty much still just an employee, which is a frustrating place to be for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, they don't really know what they want at the end of the day. What I recommend doing is figure out what kind of life you want to live. What does that look like? How much travel, how much time off, whatever that is, and then architect your business to support that lifestyle. Because if you don't do that, like you said, no matter how much money you make, you're never going to be happy because you're not living the lifestyle that you actually want to live. So you almost have to like reverse engineer the lifestyle you want to build a business to accommodate that.
Totally agree. So that's a great transition point to my next question. I always love when it works out like that, where I try to put a question out there and it works perfectly. So you talk about reverse engineering from your goals. So your first company you started, did you have a clear place you wanted to be in mind? And what was that place like for you that inspired you to start a company?
Not. I mean, I was a young 20-year-old in college who had these summer jobs where my parents made me work 40, 50 hours a week. So the only thing that I knew is that I did not want to work for someone else. I was going to be miserable, and that I had no money in my bank account and I had to make a lot of money. And that was it. I mean, young entrepreneurs aren't thinking, oh, what am I going to do when I'm 35? Let's think of like a wife, a kids, a family, freedom. They're thinking about how do I pay off my student loans? How do I not have to go get a job out of college? And how do I live in a nicer place? So for me, I mean, that all came with maturity years later. I think a lot of people, they kind of go through that honeymoon period, right? They've never had money, or maybe they come from corporate, they're getting $50,000 a year, and they've always wondered what it'd be like to make 150, 2,000, 200,000, whatever it is. And then they finally get there. They make it for a year, 2 years, whatever it is, and they're like, okay, money's here, I have it, but money's not everything. Now, how do I actually enjoy life and set that up? And then you get older and you start thinking about a family, kids, dogs, whatever makes sense for what you want to do, and those priorities change. And I think part of it kind of goes with the hustle too. When I was 20, I could work 60 hours a week, and I could do that for an entire year because I knew that I did not want to get a job after college, and it was worth it. Now, if I'm working 60 hours a week, it's like, wow, my systems suck. I need to fix this so that next week I don't have to do that again, even though I still love what I'm doing. So I think part of it's maturity and getting older, and part of it, I mean, there is a point in your life as an entrepreneur that you're going to have to go through that hustle, whether it's a year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. Very few entrepreneurs just create that perfect architect business on that first try and get out of the grind within 6 months. That usually doesn't happen. So sometimes it does take a second business like I had, or just a few years in to realize, okay, this is great, I'm making a lot of money, but if I go at this pace, I'm going to burn out at some point.
So what was that for you? What was that point? You talk about getting from, nothing to 100,000 a year, $20,000 a year. What was that transition point for you where you were like this company, whatever, what the company was and kind of where you were at when you hit that?
So I made a good amount of money my first 5 years out of college. And when I started the office and my Amazon business was there, I got into Amazon at a really good time. So I got in at 2008. No one knew what selling on Amazon was. So I had a huge leg up before all the courses, the gurus came out. We were doing over $5 million a year, $25 million over the course of 7-8 years. And at the end of the day, I wasn't selling my own products. I was actually selling baby products and toys. And I was selling other people's products. I'm not passionate about baby products and toys now. I wasn't passionate about it back then, but it was a lot of fun making money and being an entrepreneur for the first time and all that. But when our sales went from 5 million to it became more competitive and we were in that 2 to 3 million, okay, great, I'm making money, but I'm not selling products I'm passionate about. I'm not growing my brand in any way. Amazon owns my brand. I'm just a third-party seller on Amazon. And how long was I really going to do that for? I'm just kind of going in circles trying to stay afloat on Amazon, adjusting to their algorithm, their changes, their competition. So when I started FreeUp on the side and FreeUp quickly surpassed my Amazon sales, that was the point where it was almost a no-brainer. You would think it'd be a tough decision, but it was like, okay, with FreeUp, I'm growing. I get to grow my brand. I get to not be relying on Amazon. I'm actually like controlling my end product and what I want to do. And even if that fails, because on Amazon, you kind of have a safety net of like their entire customer base, right? And on your own, you got to find your own traffic, find your own customers. If they leave you, you got to find new customers. So there's some risk there, but I couldn't see myself just being a third-party seller on Amazon for the next 20 years. So it was more about that, where it was like, okay, if free up fails, I'm not going to go homeless. I've made a good amount of money over the past 5 years. I'll have to come up with another idea, but that's really what I want to do. That's my passion. That's where it's fun. If I have to deal with one more listing suppressed on Amazon where I have to work through the weekend to fix something that has nothing to do with really growing my business, I'm going to go crazy. And that was my decision.
Totally. I think it's an interesting decision that unfortunately most people, I mean, maybe more people are starting to make it now just out of necessity, but for the last, few years, that's been a clear red flag, and it's scary. And there's probably a lot of people that are watching this now or will watch it in the future that are building businesses on somebody else's business. Right. And it doesn't matter. I think a lot of people have this notion that, well, if I get big enough, it won't matter, right? I'll be so big that it won't, I'll just be able to crush it. But the perfect example of that is like Spotify, right? Spotify is should be like a juggernaut, right? And they are a really big company, but like the one thing holding them back is that their distribution is through Apple, like their biggest distribution is through Apple. And like when Apple came out with Apple Music, they went from like number 1 listing for music to like number 20. Right. And we all know there's no really database reason why they would fall. It's because Apple came out with a competitor and they said, they figure out a way to rig the system. So Spotify drops down. Like, that's a scary place to be. Yeah. Spotify's a multi-billion-dollar company and they're at the mercy of a bigger, $500 billion company, which is just terrifying.
Yeah, so we live in a good and a bad time. We live in a good time because it's never been easier to start an online business, right? Yep. You just need some internet, a laptop. Anyone can do it. You don't even need a college degree anymore. You can get courses online. You can hire people remotely. You don't need an office. At the same time, we live in a time where the biggest companies are buying and getting into buying other companies, buying every other company, and they're getting into as many different industries and niches as they possibly can. So you look at beer, all the different beers out there, no matter what beer you like, it's probably owned by like one of the 3 top beer companies. Same thing with airlines, same thing with Apple and Amazon, just getting into every possible industry they can imagine. So who knows how that will all play out? Who knows if there will be regulation or what will happen? But the pros and the cons. And I mean, the most important thing is you have to understand it. You have to know that you're not invincible, and you have to be looking at what are the threats, what are the potential holes, what are the weaknesses. And if you're aware of them, you can adjust your business, you can tweak, you can start second businesses, you can diversify, get different revenue streams, different suppliers, whatever it is. And you just have to follow what's going on. And there shouldn't be a situation now with the ability for you to get news so quickly and updates and even just follow your competition. How easy is it to just follow what your competitors are doing nowadays? That you shouldn't be blindsided or surprised by any means. You should know what those threats are and be constantly making adjustments to counteract them.
Totally. I think, part of it is just lack of information, people just being, just they don't read it, they don't consume it. The other part is, I think, just like ignorance, right? I think there's a lot of people out there who just, it's not going to happen to me, right? We're fine. And you've seen that with just so many juggernaut companies that have, with the biggest players who don't exist anymore, like Blockbuster, right? How can you be such a power player and just, you disappear? Well, so you didn't take Netflix seriously. You didn't take online distribution seriously. And by the time you take it seriously, because your numbers are tanking, you don't have the resources. And that's like, I think one of the greatest pieces of advice I ever got from a marketing perspective was from Ezra. This is when I first met him, before we were friends. This is when I was kind of following him and sitting in an audience watching him. And he was talking about like how they reinvest profits into alternative channels. Right. So instead of just saying, hey, we're running Facebook ads and we're super profitable and we're just going to take those profits and distribute them to the owners or just put them into the company, we're going to take 20-30% of our daily profits and we're going to reinvest them into other channels. We're going to test Pinterest, we're going to test Twitter, we're going to test Snap, we're going to test direct mail, whatever it might be. And if you do that, you're bound to find other winning channels. Just if you have a great product, great offer, you're going to find other things work. So now you have 2 or 3 things that are working. Now you can take, 20-30% of those profits, which is a bigger number, and find newer things. And eventually you end up with a diversified acquisition strategy. Most people, though, they milk the Facebook button as long as they can, and all the money goes into things that they bought. And then when it stops working, they don't have any cash to reinvest. Now they're coming out of pocket, and now it's a lot more painful. And it's I see it happen all the time. Like literally just every few weeks, I see a story, see an example. I meet somebody that it happened to. And it's the same reason they're in that position. They just didn't reinvest. They didn't test other things. They just kept, pulling the cash out, and then eventually it dries up.
Yeah, or they put it into something for a little bit, and that little bit doesn't turn into what that big giant was. Let's say they're an Amazon seller. Okay, I'm going to take 20% of my profits, put it into Shopify. Well, after 3 months, Shopify isn't generating anywhere near the amount of sales on Amazon. Okay, that wasn't worth the investment. Let's pull back. Instead of committing yourself to, no, like 20% of my profits are going into trying new things. And what trying new things means is there's going to be failures along the way. We're going to have to figure stuff out, but you have to resist that temptation and just revert back to that one thing that makes you money. I mean, I had an agency that I was using for Instagram. They were on the FreeUp platform, and Instagram changed their algorithm. You're probably aware of that. That happened a few months ago, and they were out of business in 24 hours. They couldn't do anything. So, I mean, that stuff exists, and you gotta keep a focus on that 20%. And if that one thing doesn't work, try something else. Try doing that thing in a different way. You can't just revert back to the status quo.
Yeah, we do live in a time. This goes back to the technology and the instant communication and the attention span issue. And I think we have a lot of people that don't have the ability to tough it out for an extended period of time, right? It's like I'm used to being able to put up a Facebook ad and generate massive profits today, right? But people aren't looking even 7 days out, 14 days out, 30 days out, 60 days out plus. Like we have, consulting clients that have come to us or big deals that have come to us 2-3 years after originally getting into your ecosystem, right? It's so hard if you're just focused on that like 1 day, 30-day attribution window. You're not looking out, what is this lead or this customer worth to us over a year, 2 years, 3 years? It's hard to build a real business that's doing anything more than a few $100,000 a year, because you're capping yourself in your scalability and how you can acquire customers. That's another kind of common theme I see is people like putting the brakes on and not accelerating their acquisition because they're so focused. I need to have a 5x return in my first 24 hours or else I can't acquire more customers. Well, I asked them, well, what do you need to be profitable? I need to be at a 1.8x. So where did you get the 5x from? Well, I just want to make that big cushion. There's no data that's backing it. It's like a feeling or what I want instead of what's real, which is really frustrating.
Yeah, I also think people overlook the organic side of it. I mean, we've grown FreeUp spending very little money on Facebook ads and running. If you're good at Facebook ads, that's great. Obviously, you can make a lot of money that way, but there's also ways that you can grow your brand where if that one thing fails, you still have an audience, you still have a customer base. I mean, creating a referral program that you actually tell every single one of your clients, you have a part of your website you actually pay out and that people are aware of it. Going on podcasts and webinars and Facebook Live, stuff that stays out there that leads to backlinks and partnerships and networking, working with micro influencers or even doing joint ventures with people, whether it's a blog swap, a cross promotion. Those are the kind of things that build you a really solid foundation that, hey, let's say you figured out a great audience for you on Facebook ads and that ads get shut down. You're not going from 100 to 0. You're going from 100 back to your solid base that you spent years and years building and that's built up over time. And then you can continue to try other things to expand that base.
Totally. So that actually leads me to a question, which is for FreeUp, you kind of listed a few things, but for the brand specifically, like what has been the one or two things that's been kind of, I'll say, what's been like the most consistent thing, and what's been the thing that's probably had the biggest impact on your growth on the customer side?
Yeah, I kind of already named that. So, I mean, the referral program was probably one of the better business decisions I've ever made. From day 6, I created it where you get 50 cents for every hour we bill to someone that comes from you forever. If you refer a freelancer, every hour they bill forever. And without spending any money on marketing, people who like the service were talking about us at conferences across the world to their friends, their masterminds, whatever it was. Boom, quick, easy way to get out there. Second, I mentioned podcasts. I've probably been on 250 plus podcasts. They're great in so many ways, not just networking, but getting in front of your target audience, getting in front of thousands of your ideal customers at once. That podcast's not going anywhere. That the backlinks and everything are great for SEO. You never know what kind of partnerships it's going to lead to as well. And then we try to go after micro-influencers. We reach out to them every day. I get rejected. I can't even tell you how many times a week I get rejected, but we go after them in the right mindset. We're not aggressively pitching them. We're saying, hey, would love to connect, would love to tell you more about, would love to figure out how we can get you in front of our audience, adding value. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, sometimes they lead to other things, but you have to get influencers on your side with your business. If you're out there and you're selling a barbecue sauce, you should be reaching out to cooks and barbecue professionals every single day and trying to connect with as many as you possibly can, because they have the same exact audience that you do. And if you're constantly doing it and you're not giving up when you fail, those are going to lead to a lot of good connections that are organic. I'm losing my voice a little bit, that are going to stay there regardless of whether you're going to run a Facebook ad to that exact same group.
Yeah, I think influencer marketing is definitely a really underrated strategy for a lot of businesses, and specifically the way you're doing it, right? So micro influencers, because everyone wants Kim Kardashian to promote their stuff,
right?
But at the end of the day, it's obviously super expensive, and it's also like what we found is the bigger the audience, the less tight the bonds are, right? So the bonds are a little looser the bigger the audience is, just inherently, right? Because there's people that I liked her Facebook page or Instagram because my wife liked her, or whatever it might be. It's not like a direct thing. You have a micro influencer who has, a few thousand followers. Those are usually much more passionate, right? Those are the early adopters. Those people that found that person early on. They're the most intimate fans, and usually the most likely to listen to that person when they actually make an endorsement or recommendation. So definitely recommend the kind of micro influencer, long tail influencer strategy. It's super effective.
And you can't just go to the top level people. Like if I reached out to Ezra and I've never worked with anyone before, Ezra probably gets a million of those reach outs every day. You have to build a foundation of people and work your way up from the D, the C, the B to the A type influencers. Yep,
exactly. So we only have a few more minutes before we do the Q&A. So I'm curious where you think the industry is going in terms of what FreeUp's doing. Maybe that's a combination of what kind of FreeUp's goals are, combined with what you're seeing just in like finding talent, managing talent, keeping talent there.
Yeah, I think we're in a great industry. I think everything's going in that direction. They predict that over the next 10 years, over 50% of the workforce is going to be remote. Public or Upwork and Fiverr, they just went public. I mean, more and more people, they want to freelance, they want to have side jobs, whatever that is. So I think we're in a great industry. I think more and more niches are going to start adapting that industry. I know when I started with Amazon sellers, not many Amazon sellers were using VAs. Now, if you're an Amazon seller and you're not using VAs, you're crazy. And same thing going into the marketing space, which is something that we spent the past year doing. And I think there's a lot of other industries that we can get into, whether it's software companies, real estate agents, even brick and mortar. There's a sushi restaurant in Orlando that's a client of FreeUp because they can do their social media there. They don't need an in-house social media person. So I think everything is going in that direction, whether we like it or not, and then it just becomes who can do it better. I think we've kind of been doing the whole job board thing for 5-10 years now. I think people are getting sick of that, and we're trying to create a better, faster, more efficient way to hire, and time will tell whether that stands up or if someone comes up with the next Uber, the next idea on how to tweak that industry even more.
Yeah, I think it's definitely you're in the right spot trend-wise. What's going to be really fascinating is I think there's like a lot of employers are looking to do things in terms of like employment for a future trend base, right? So I think outsourcing is definitely one of them. I think the other thing is like looking to go even beyond that, which is using AI and machine learning and all these new these kind of innovative technologies coming out to just completely replace jobs entirely, right? So you have there's companies now in the legal space that'll review contracts and flag things that are just issues or the wrong statement, or they're just not up to code with what the company wants. And it was a special I watched like last week, and this program basically did a job review 2 or 3 NDAs, and it did it in like 20 minutes. The lawyer they had there took 2 hours, and it was like 98% accurate. The lawyer was like 65, 70% accurate. and missed a really key provision in there. So that's going to be really interesting as well, is seeing, a lot of, I think, less critical thinking based, creative based jobs that can easily be, or I wouldn't say easily, but are going to most easily compared to like the scale, right? And most in the shortest period of time are going to be replaced by AI and stuff. I think you're in the right spot though, which is, and this is what I've thought about in marketing, it's like doubling down on skills that are much harder for a program to replace and automate, at least in the short term, because there are certain job types that are just very, very difficult for any type of program to fully automate with the technology we have right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, if you have to learn one skill set right now, I mean, teach your kids how to code, teach your kids how to do PHP, Python, Node. I mean, that's where everything's going. If you can code, you can start your own business, you can get a job anywhere. That's where it's at. And I do agree. I think there's things that are going to be harder for computers to do, like customer service. I think we're probably years away from a really good to AI customer service system. I think most people get pissed off when they're dealing with them now. But I agree. I mean, stuff like data entry, you can build plugins and apps for all that stuff. And it's going to be interesting how things play out and whether you and I are out of jobs at some point.
Yeah, I think this is the last point, and then we'll go into some questions. What's hard to see, and this is, I think, it's frustrating, like watching the debate on this, because you see a lot of people that are very upset about it, right? You see a lot of people that are like, we need to stop this, especially things like truck drivers. Like truck driving is a very, very big industry. It's one of the best jobs you can have if you're not a college educated male. And that's the kind of the dominant demographic is, high school educated men that are driving. But it's impossible to see what this next revolution in technology will do for like opening up doors to jobs and industries that were unfathomable. Like we can't even think about them right now because it was just so improbable to have the ability to solve problems, right? It's like before electricity was super cost efficient, it was never fathomable to build massive skyscrapers or to build certain, structures because you couldn't just flip a switch and have light. It was just pitch black, right? So there's things that I think will come up, and there's industries that'll open up. The challenge is going to be people that are too far along in their career, that they're not able to educate and reskill fast enough. But yeah, I would recommend, I think what you're saying is right. It's, if you can learn skills, think about skills that'll be even in more demand with an influx in robotics and AI, right? So when there's a lot more robots and a lot more AI out there, what do you need? You need people that can build the robots, maintain the robots, that can write code for them. That's all jobs that are going to be in very, very high demand. And so that's important, I think, if you're kind of entering the workforce right now and thinking about like, what skill should I do? What should I pursue pathwise? Well, think about, where the growth's going to be.
Yeah, completely agree. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yep, definitely. All right. So you guys know the drill every week. If you're not part of Paid Traffic Training, make sure to go to paidtraffictraining.com, sign up so you get to ask our amazing guests every week, like Nathan, questions and get kind of more personal insight. So we're going to cut the feed right now. Guys on Paid Traffic Training, we'll be with you in just a second once we cut the feed. We're